Welcome on into the Wolverine.com podcast. Clayton Sayfie here with Balas and Anthony Broome. We are on a Friday, one day later than usual for a pretty good reason. We were down in Indianapolis, back here in the great state of Michigan, but attending Big Ten Media Days. Michigan, the defending national champs, the three-time defending conference champions down there, Sherrone Moore, safety Makari Page, fullback tight end Max Bredesen, and running back Donovan Edwards representing the maize and blue. They were looking sharp. They were looking good. They had a lot of interesting things to say, and we will run those down here on the podcast. Before we get into it, want to make sure to remind people to get their Michigan Football Preview magazine, which I have right here, Will Johnson on the cover, 160 pages, jam-packed with information. You can click the link in the description here to the video or the podcast, or head to the WolverineOnDemand.com. And while you're at it, for a keepsake, might as well order an issue of the Michigan Football National Championship edition of the magazine as well. That one jam-packed with all sorts of stuff from last season. But Michigan moving forward, Team 144 to Team 145. And coming out of Media Day, remind people, too, to head to the Wolverine.com for all of our coverage. We got a bunch of stuff up on the site. Much more to come in the hours and days ahead. You can use the promo code UM1 for 2 months of premium access for just $1. So get on the message board. A ton of discussion about Big Ten Media Days and fall camp starting in less than a week. But this will get you in for 2 months for just $1. So pretty much free, great deal there. Best deal in America. But we got Sherrone Moore yesterday, 45 minutes off the podium. He had about 10 minutes on the podium in front of everybody on national television. And, these things can go bad for first-time coaches. We saw that with UCLA's Deshaun Foster. Of course, Sherrone Moore's been in a little more of a spotlight, but he's also just more of an impressive dude. And I thought he was cool, calm, collected, confident about his Michigan football team. He laid out his team's goals. He said, we want to win the big games, beat our rivals, beat Ohio State, win the Big Ten, go to the college football playoff and win it. That's something we strive to do. This team has been tough, dependable, smart, relentless, enthusiastic, and together. Guys, I was impressed with Sherrone Moore yesterday. We talked about it on the car ride home. I thought it was a really good showing.
Looking sharp, too. Look at the suit, man. It was awesome. But just really handled himself well. And, you look at Makari Page, too. Hey, AB, I'm going to ask you, when you think of Ohio State, what do you think?
A dub.
A dub. That's exactly what Makari Page said. That's going to be on their bulletin board. Oh, no, not another bulletin board material, more bulletin board material for Ohio State. But I thought Sherrone Moore was fantastic. He seems confident. He doesn't, all these people, even a few Michigan fans, he's in over his head. What's he done to deserve the job? So on and so forth. He seemed like anything but. He seems like a guy that's confident in his ability. He feels like a guy that really learned a lot from Jim Harbaugh and a guy that's going to keep this thing going. So I loved what he said about Max Bredesen, what a stud he is. I think people underestimate Max Bredesen and his impact, what he's going to have on this team. So it epitomizes the toughness of this Michigan program that we've seen the last 3 years, the way that they've won and the way that they've bullied Ohio State, if we're being honest, in 2 of those 3 years. And how about Ryan Day's remarks, guys, that we should have won that game, and come on, clown. You know what? You either win it or you don't. There is no should or shouldn't. We could go back and play the should and shouldn't game for the 17 years that Ohio State dominated the rivalry. But Donovan Edwards, love that kid. Hope that he gets everything that he should get this year in terms of being a number 1 back and the accolades that come with it, fellas. Great day. It was a fun day yesterday.
Yeah, the thing with Sherrone, and again, it's adjusting for the fact that it is July 26th, right? We know that they haven't played any games yet. So when I say that I'm impressed with the job he's done so far, and people respond with, well, hasn't coached any games yet, so we don't really know. I understand that. At the same time, just think of the things we've seen out of him the last calendar year. The moment has not been too big for him, whether it's coaching on 90 minutes notice, a game at Penn State, or stepping in, 48 hours after Jim Harbaugh leaves for the Los Angeles Chargers. He feels like a guy, and operationally, Michigan feels like a program that is being run by someone who knows what they're doing. The conviction that he acts with, it seems like every time he does take the podium for something or make some sort of appearance, he does carry himself like a CEO, like a guy who's a leader that runs a program, that knows what he's doing. So, again, I think a lot of what we've seen over the last several months has just kind of been like an affirmation of the things we think we already know. And none of this is to say that they're going to run it back. They're going 17-0 and winning a national title again. But it just, not that there were any big takeaways from things that we didn't already gather throughout the last several months, but Michigan football is in extremely good and extremely capable hands. And, what that means for the future, what that means for what Michigan does on a national scale, we'll see. But, to me, again, not that he should be compared to Sean Foster, but again, doesn't talk and carry himself like a guy who has never sat in the big chair before. So really exciting stuff.
And AB, I knew what you were saying on the message board, and you can only judge him on what he has faced so far, right? No, he has not coached the game as the permanent head coach. He has coached games, though, as an interim head coach and done one hell of a job. But everything he's done in terms of recruiting, in terms of representing the program, in terms of expectations for the program. And one thing that I thought was very interesting was Ben Herbert comes back and he says, it's like nothing's changed. He said it feels exactly the same. The Michigan strength coach passing the torch to Justin Tress. They go out there and he comes back and he sees exactly what he saw when he left. That's a really, really good sign. Now, longevity is going to be the test, right, for him. He's got to be able to continue it. Is he going to be David Shaw and win a few years? He's going to win this year, guys. The question is how much, but is he going to be able to continue the winning beyond the 3 or 4 years, that a program, that a previous coach and his success can carry you, kind of like we saw with John Beilein and Juwan Howard. That'll be the test. But you know what? To me, he's doing all the right things and showing a lot of signs that he can.
Yeah, there are a lot of things that have to come together for you to have that success too. And, he seems like he's embracing those things. NIL, he hired a general manager and in Sean McGee. He needs support, as every coach does, now more than ever, probably in this, state of college football. So, yeah, I agree with that. And I was going to bring up the Ben Herbert story that basically he comes back to a summer workout and says that. It looks like nothing's changed. It's one thing for us to ask the players throughout the offseason, hey, what's different? What's different? Nothing feels different. We're doing the same things. Practice is the same way. We have the same schedule. But for somebody like Ben Herbert to actually say that it doesn't look any different, that speaks volumes. And he's somebody that would know, and he's somebody that wouldn't say that unless he believed it. So I think that was one of the most encouraging things I heard at Media Day yesterday. Let's get into the quarterbacks, I guess. The unsurprising part of that was that there weren't many answers, but Chris, you seem to be, pretty, I guess, interested by the comments on Jack Tuttle, how accurate he's been, how good he's been since coming back and getting healthy after the injury, and Sherrone Moore on who the starter is going to be. He says, I'll let you guys know as soon as we know, maybe, which is, probably not. And he says the best 11 will play. So pretty much a non-answer at that point, and they're going to need fall camp to determine that. But he did have some good things to say about Jack Tuttle.
Yeah, and speaking to insiders close to the program, they don't know who their quarterback is yet, and that's what fall camp is for. But there's a segment of this fan base, right, that takes it as bad news, like a bad sign that Jack Tuttle might have improved to the point where he can lead this team. And it's just the opposite, guys. You know what? You want these guys to be good and to push each other. Oh, my God, he might be good enough to beat a not as good Alex Orji or something. They get enamored with the body and they get enamored with the athlete. And I understand that because we would all love Alex Orji to blossom into the next Cam Newton, a guy who can absolutely dominate with his arm and with his legs. And to this point, he has not shown that ability because they haven't even let him throw, guys. So we don't know. And from everything we heard in fall, from what we saw with our own eyes in the spring game, you even got people going back 2 spring games ago. Well, Jack Tuttle threw that interception. You know what? Guys improved, number one. Number two, he wasn't playing with a first-team offense, right? So number three, we've seen several guys have poor spring games or one bad game, and it doesn't indicate anything at all about what they're capable of. So I would love it if you had 2 great options, right? Jack Tuttle, 3 great options. Say Davis Warren comes out of nowhere and really dominates too and has a great fall. You have 3 great options, so it's hard to choose the best one. This is not about, okay, who's the least bad quarterback, right? That's not what you want. You want these guys to improve. We've seen guys like Brian Greasy. It took till his 5th year for him to really shine and show that he could be a quarterback. I remember a lot of people going into 97 thinking, man, they've got everything but the QB, right? Even though Brian Greasy showed some things in the Ohio State game that year that won him the Ohio State game in 96. He hadn't shown anything to indicate that he could do what he did in 97. And even then, he had some bad games. That Iowa game comes to mind. This is probably before you guys were born. So, but regardless, you want your quarterbacks to all be good. It is a good sign that Jack Tuttle is improving. We've heard from everybody who has seen 7-on-7s that he is the most accurate passer so far. I don't think that's a big surprise to a lot of people. To hear Sherrone Moore say it, and say it with conviction, and say it not just coach speak, but he's been extremely accurate. He's got the good arm. That is a good thing for Michigan, folks. And doesn't mean he's going to win the starting job, but it does mean that he's going to push Alex Orji at the very least.
Yeah, to me, fear of the unknown is the biggest thing that's driving a lot of these narratives from like a fan perspective and really from a national perspective too. I mean, you look at this roster and it's tailor-made to make the 12-team playoff if the quarterback play gets you there. And I think what we've seen with this Michigan program over the last few years is that when the quarterback play finally hit a certain floor and then a ceiling with J.J. McCarthy, you were able to push through what that 9-10 win sort of plateau was of the early stages of the Jim Harbaugh. So it's the most consequential thing that they'll decide in this fall camp. Again, I think that it should provide at least some level of confidence. At least we'll see for now that really since the Rose Bowl, the quarterback's coach, offensive coordinator Kirk Campbell has just been kind of steadfast about what they've had. I know that they're still going to draw criticism for not attacking the transfer portal, but I mean, it's the price you pay for playing longer than anyone else and having a quarterback that played so well that he had a decision to make. So, just this idea that this is, I'm pushing back on this idea that this is 2017 all over again, where it's going to be musical chairs and no one ever establishes themselves. The position holds them back. It very well could hold them back from competing for a national title. Maybe it affects, the bid for the 12-team playoff. But the 3 guys that they have, I think that they all bring something interesting to the table. And that's not something I think you could say back in 2017. So to me, it's incumbent upon the players to go out and have a good camp, give these coaches a decision to make. And I believe them when they say they don't know who it's going to be, because again, this fall camp, that the month run up that they'll have to the season, you're going to sink or swim at this point. And we know that they're going to pick the guy that runs the offense, that can make all the throws, and that takes care of the football. And I think they have at least 2 really good solid options there, and maybe 3 if Alex Orji puts it all together. But they need to see a lot out of him before, just determining that he's one of their quote unquote best 11 players that they need to get on the field. Like, if he does what he needs to do in training camp, he's going to be on the field because he's your starting quarterback. But Jack Tuttle and Davis Warren, I think, are going to have a say in this.
The interesting part to me, Clay, I want your opinion on this. If he says he is one of our best 11, so he's going to play anyway, what do you do with him? Does that mean a position switch? Does that mean a lot more packages for him? Does that mean running back, 2-back set and Alex Orji is out there and you're doing things with him? That's what I don't know.
Yeah, I know. It's kind of the big question because, Kirk Campbell, with his comments when he was on our show the other day, where it's like, and I think a lot of people took his comments saying that, hey, we're going to have a plan for him. He's going to, get on the field. They took that as, hey, he's not the starter, but they're going to do some different things with him. I don't think it means you make him a non-quarterback. I think that, I don't know if there's time to do that because he's going to compete for the job in fall camp. Now, maybe you do use him at times, like the 3rd down play before the famous 4th down in the Rose Bowl was almost a disaster. JJ almost threw a pick on that last drive there before he completed it to Blake Corum down, and he ran down the field. But Alex Orji was in motion, and he was kind of used as a decoy on that play. So maybe you do some things like that, but I don't think that's going to be a big part of what you do offensively. I think it'd look in Angelique Shangelis from the Detroit News asked, Sherrone yesterday, could it be like 2021 when JJ McCarthy was kind of the change of pace and Cade McNamara was the starter? I think that is much more plausible with actually probably more orgy than we saw of McCarthy. McCarthy, there were some games he didn't even play in that year. But that's how I see it at this point. But like you said, CB, it seems like it's fall camp is going to be what determines this. And you hope that they get their answer, right? Jim Harbaugh said, like, we're just, he used to say this, like, we want a guy to separate. Like, we want to see separation. And you hope they get that fairly quickly in camp. I know you want it to be a good competition, but this schedule is pretty tough early on. You want to have some answers, and then you can start formulating exactly what that plan with Orgy looks like. So timing is big here. They don't have that much time, but fall camp it's like a month, but it's almost like 2 months because you spend so much time on it and practice time and everything else. But moving on to the rest of the offense, some breakout players that I think that they were pretty confident in. One, this is a takeaway from the whole week from talking to guys at the golf outing the other day too. His teammates absolutely love Frederick Moore. Everybody loves him. So, they seem to have fun watching him run routes and everything else. But Tyler Morris, clearly, the top wide receiver entering fall camp. I don't think that's a surprise at all. But watch out for Kalel Mullings. Sherrone Moore says he's going to be a force. He looks as good as he ever has. He's going to have a great year. Watch him last year. Every time he came in, had an explosive play, a big play, runs over somebody, makes somebody miss. It's hard to take out the ball out of Blake Corum's hands, basically saying, hey, that's why he only had, 30 or 40 carries last year. But I think Kalel could be a huge part of this offense. And in listening to Donovan Edwards, too, somebody asked him, hey, can you be a 25-carry guy? And he said, yeah, I can be, but, and I will do that if needed. But he's like, I want Kalel Mullings to get carries. I want Ben Hall to get carries. I want Tavi Dunlap to get carries. He said, I want to get 4 or 5 receptions as well. Like, these guys understand that Kalel Mullings and other guys are going to have a role. But what'd you make of that and maybe some other breakout guys on offense that are going to surround Colston Loveland and whoever the quarterback is?
That's one of the things I love about Donovan Edwards, right? And he learned, yes. I think, and he's always been like that. He didn't learn that from anybody. That's who he is. But like JJ McCarthy was the same guy, right? I just want to win. Yeah, he was disappointed he didn't throw in the second half against Penn State. And he talked to Sherrone Moore about it. Don't you trust me? And Sherrone said it had nothing to do with that. And it had everything to do with that's how we were going to win the game. He says, okay, I'm good with that. So, and you could sense that. You can sense the same thing about Donovan Edwards. And you can sense the camaraderie in that room. I think Kalel Mullings is going to be an outstanding back. And really, if we're being honest, Donovan Edwards still has something to prove as to whether or not he can be that 25-carry guy, guys. You can't afford to be in 3rd and long if you have a quarterback, that's not J.J. McCarthy, who was making great decisions and could do things with his arm that probably some of these guys can't do. You hope that they can eventually, but you know what? You've got to be in more 3rd and short, so you're going to have more. You can't have those stops at the line of scrimmage. We saw way too many from Donovan last year, and it wasn't always his fault, guys. In fact, a lot of the time it wasn't his fault, but you need that guy that's going to get those extra few yards to set up 2nd and shorter and 3rd and shorter to put yourselves in better positions. So, but I think Kalel Mullings is going to be one of those guys that, boy, you have to get him some carries, because I went back and watched him in that Nebraska game, you see the vision, you see the power, and now I think Sherrone Moore said he looks better than he ever has. He said he looks like a monster. I forget the word that he used, but he said he was just fantastic and looks the part and is going to be tough to bring down. So got to tuck that ball away like he has been. But I think he's going to be a beast. So to me, this is going to be a run-heavy offense again, and you've got options there. So, but at the same time, defenses are going to be scheming to that, right? We saw it last year. That's why the running game wasn't as good at the beginning of the year, because they had safeties coming into the box. I remember Blake Corum saying, I think after the East Carolina game, that he got to the line and there was a safety there waiting for him. He said, man, in the first 2-3 games of the year, that's how it was. So they're going to have to figure it out. But I have full confidence in Kirk Campbell. I think this guy is a mastermind as an offensive coordinator. Everything we've heard, everybody that we've talked to has said the same thing about him. So they'll get him his touches, and it'll be exciting to see how it plays out, fellas.
Kalel Mullings is one of the more interesting players on this roster, because he is going to do something that we haven't seen Donovan Edwards do a lot of, frankly. Despite the idea that we think Donovan will be the lead guy, Kalel Mullings is going to run through you, and he's got he's got the wiggle. He's got some juice to him as well down the field. He is kind of what there's a portion of the fan base that has turned, and again, this isn't speaking ill of the young man. There's a portion of the fan base that's kind of turned Ben Hall into a bit of like a folk hero and someone that they hope is a breakout player this year. Kalel Mullings is everything that I think fans are hoping Ben Hall will be at some point, and he's going to be it right off the bat this year. I think this is a true 1A and 1B backfield. That's the indications we've gotten all year or all offseason about it. And then from there, like guys like Jordan Marshall and Ben Hall and Cole Cabana, Tavier Dunlap, those guys will be in the mix for that number 3 job. But Kalel Mullings, and he's not just this like bruising back either. Like we said, I think he's got a little bit of home run ability down the field. We've seen him, had a huge reception in the Rose Bowl along the sideline down the field. So again, when we talk about maybe breakout players who aren't getting discussed enough, I think that he's one of the guys near the top of that list.
And Sherrone said that. Clay, what did you make of the Jordan Marshall comparison to Blake Corum from Sherrone?
Yeah, I was going to get to that. I mean, he's not the first one that's made it, and it makes you feel good about what they have there in the future. And Jordan Marshall is going to get his chance this year to earn some carries. And, Anthony and I talked about this, I think, Monday, right? Where, look, there's going to be opportunity. Maybe they're blowing out Fresno State or something like that. And Jordan Marshall gets in, and if he looks good, breaks off a couple runs, like it's going to be intriguing for what the rest of the year can look like for him. Now, he's got to learn the playbook and all that. But from what Donovan Edwards has told us, he has really embraced that process that he has to learn, and he has some things to make up. And I'm sure he was sent stuff before he got on campus here this summer. But they have depth there. The depth at running back, when you compare it to what it was in 2022 when they played Illinois, and Isaiah Gash, God bless him, had to come in and make a huge 4th down pickup. It's night and day. And Kalel Mullings is a big part of that, but so are some of the guys behind them. Other couple things on offense, little interesting that, and Chris, this was your question to Sherrone, and maybe it was coach speak, but he said, yeah, Raheem Anderson is battling with Greg Crippen at center. He didn't really touch too much on the right tackle battle other than saying that it's Jeff Percy and Andrew Gentry there. But then later in a question, if you read the tea leaves, when he said the offensive lineman he's most excited about, he said Andrew Gentry, but didn't say Jeff Percy. So, and the writing was kind of on the wall there from the spring game. They had Percy playing guard. Gentry was at right tackle. But your guys' thoughts on maybe what we heard about the offensive line yesterday?
Yeah, I like Gentry, and I think he's going to have a great year. I think this kid really wants it. Speaking to him in Cleveland at the Hall of Fame, guys, when we went with the team on their trip around the East Coast and back to Cleveland, I could really sense how badly he wants to be a good football player, and I think he's got it in him. So a lot of people say, well, maybe he's better at guard. They've been playing guys at tackle that were probably better at guard for a long time, and it's worked out pretty well for them. My bigger concern, and we were talking about this in the car yesterday, is Miles Hinton, right? Can he be that guy? And I think AB was the one that brought it up. Can he be that nasty guy that wants to go out there and really wants to be a football player and use his skills to dominate? Or is he a guy that is kind of forced to play football because he's so big and talented and has the measurables? So I think we're going to find out. This is a big one. The center one, it kind of kills me because I love Raheem Anderson, right? And I would love to see him get his opportunity too. Greg Crippen, though, I know for a fact was offered money from other Big Ten schools to bolt, and instead he wanted to wait his turn and be the center here. And I respect that. I respect that a lot. So, but both guys are in the same boat there. You want to see both of them play, and maybe they will, right? We've seen it over the years where they've had to go to backups, and guys get banged up. It's a long season. And it's going to be one of those years with this schedule, fellows, where there are going to be probably some more injuries. Guys are going to be playing more snaps and everything else. So, but I do think the line will be a strength. And as Sherrone Moore said, he said, that's my baby. I may not be the offensive line coach anymore, but I am the head coach. And that is my thing. That is what we are going to do. I completely trust Grant Newsome to continue the tradition of excellence that has been built there. Let's be honest, guys. These guys love Sherrone Moore, and they don't want to let him down. And I saw that in the spring game, the way those guys were firing off the ball. Didn't matter if it was the ones or the twos. Those guys were playing hard, and they're going to continue to play hard for Sherrone Moore. I love the prospects of this offensive line.
Well, and it's, again, we know on the surface level, the narrative is that all 5 starters will be replaced from last year. But when you look at it a little deeper, it is guys like Greg Crippen and Giovanni El Hadi who have sort of been over-seasoned to a certain extent, where, either of those guys in a different set of circumstances could have started on last year's team. So, I have high expectations there. Again, it's a big task to be like, all right, you're stepping in for Drake Nugent, you're stepping in for Zach Sinner, but I think those guys will be ready. And Josh Preed, again, I think we know what they're getting there. They like him a lot. The Miles Hinton thing to me is just the biggest wild card in all of it, because again, even going back to when we did that Rose Bowl media day, I think it was Kurt Campbell. There's a couple of guys that said, we think he can be a first-round talent. I don't know if he can be more than a couple weeks starter yet, because we haven't seen it at Michigan. Now, again, it sounds like he had a great offseason. Sounds like he kind of trimmed up and got himself in better shape. Not that was a huge concern last year, but he's got to stay healthy and he's got to play consistent. There's some really good stuff on film from him early last year, but then just too many miscues and a lack of awareness at times, and bad fundamentals, bad technique. That's got to get cleaned up, because if he doesn't win, or if he doesn't play well at left tackle, it's one of those scenarios where you're like, okay, now what? Because I don't think, this group doesn't have the luxury of, all right, well, we have Trente Jones on the bench, or we have Ladarius Henderson who's waiting for a job. We have Carson Barnhart who can play anywhere. I don't know that there's nearly as much depth or versatility with what they'll have. So Miles Hinton to me is, and again, Sherrone talked him up yesterday. He said he has the chance to be the best of any of them. Sure, he could, but it's his 5th year in college too. So just waiting to see that be fully unlocked.
Yeah, and I can go back to guys like Grady Brooks and Elaine Kashima, guys who were before your time, guys that were, everybody was waiting for them to break out, and they never did. But Miles Hinton has had some success. Let's not, I'm not going to say that he's been a complete bust, and but he has not been the 5-star that he was projected to be. And actually, my question, Clay, was, hey, can you talk to me about some of the young guys maybe waiting in the wings? And Sherrone just wanted to talk about those guys, and that's when he brought up Gentry. So I thought that was a clue too. I'm glad you picked up on that. Yeah,
no doubt. And one of the things about that actually is the question, like you said, was about some of the young guys. And, as he should, right? He took it in the direction he wanted to and talked about some of the older guys that he likes. But there aren't as many young guys that you would feel as comfortable with. And that speaks to your point, Anthony, about maybe the lack of depth. And if you're going to play 17 games this year potentially and go until January 20th, and as you see at any moment, like last year against Ohio State, an offensive lineman can go down, you're going to want to build that depth. So it's kind of interesting. Dominic Gadis, which is apparently how you pronounce it now, earned a mention as well from Sherrone Moore. He seems to like him. We didn't hear too much about the younger tackles or anything like that, but obviously Evan Link in the mix there on the left side. Then you have Percy, who, hey, he may win the job, right, in fall camp, and he started a game in the past as well, fared pretty well on the left side against Rutgers in 2022. So we'll see kind of how that plays out. Last couple things on offense before we flip it over. I just like these two anecdotes. One, Donovan Edwards talking about how this offseason he went to the rest of the running backs. He said, I'm going to outwork every single one of you guys this offseason. And he said he was basically issuing them a challenge. Like, I want them to work as hard as me, but he's telling them, hey, I'm going to do one extra rep. I'm going to do, the things you're not doing. And he said that they've all followed his lead in that regard. So it's not like that wasn't Donovan Edwards in the past, like you said, Chris, about maybe his mentality and his unselfishness, but now he's the guy everyone's looking at. And then another thing about Donovan too is he said that, yeah, he's not taking all the praise from being on the video game and things like that. He said, I'm telling people like, hey, you can be on the cover of this video game too one day. I want other guys at Michigan and guys around the country to do that. And when they do get that acclaim, I want them to act with, respect and be humble as well. I mean, I love listening to the dude. I know we talked to him a lot this offseason, but he was really impressive. And then the second thing offensively was Semaj Morgan gets a 4.0 last semester, and Sherrone Moore says, okay, you can switch to the number 0 from his number 82 last year. And he said that Semaj Morgan's probably one of the hardest workers in practice. He loses 5 or 6 pounds per practice. Obviously, not a literal there, but because he's working so hard and running around and doing everything. So those are two of the most confident and vocal guys on the team, but they're also two of the hardest workers on the team, which is exactly what you want if you're going to carry on this culture that Michigan's established.
Yeah, and that's 5 pounds of water weight, right? It's so
yeah,
go to have that metabolism again.
Exactly. How about the defense? Little less defense talk from Michigan, understandably so. One, they sent 2 offensive players here, but 2, there aren't that many questions about the defense. They're not as much depth as last year, and that's not a maybe. That's a fact. But I don't know that a Michigan defense will ever have that much depth again. A couple things was Jair Hill looks like the guy right now, was Sherrone Moore's quote about corner on the other side of the field to Will Johnson. But he said, hey, Amir Hall, who's coming in from Albany, Ricky Johnson, a transfer from UNLV, they're both in the mix. He said Miles Pollard is making a push to get better. Makari Page says Zeke Berry looks like Dax Hill. It's good enough for me. What do you guys think about the secondary talk?
I'll take that. And I want to say one last thing about the offense. I thought it was interesting that Sherrone talked about being able to use Colston Loveland maybe as a big receiver. He said he looks like a big receiver running routes out there. And in speaking to some of the defenders, they said, man, we're playing in 7-on-7s. It's like trying to cover a big receiver, so it'll be interesting to see if they split him out that way at times too, as that guy. I think he's got the potential and the ability to do that. Obviously he doesn't have the blazing speed, but we've seen big receivers, guys that don't need blazing speed, that can still get open, use their body to shield, run great routes and catch the ball. So as for the defense, my big question was about the backup linebackers. And he said Jimmy Rolder was back where he was before he got hurt. And, Wink Martindale told me he thinks he's a pro. He told me, and you can read it in your football preview, guys, that this kid has all of the skills, there it is, to be an NFL linebacker. He's just got to stay healthy. Now he's back where he needs to be. And I love seeing that because they're going to need one other guy to step up, at least, maybe 2. Jaden Hood apparently has changed his body a little bit. So it's nice to hear that too, you guys, because, as much as Ben Herbert worked them, there's been no drop off, like we said, to Justin Tress. These guys, if you see their bodies, these guys all look fantastic. So excited about that. I thought the Jair Hill thing was interesting because last year, according to people close to it, some of the coaches that are no longer on the roster that we've talked to, they said DJ Waller was the guy that was in there all the time. What can I do? What do I do here? How do I get better? And Jair Hill was not that guy. That has completely flipped now. Jair is starting to take it a little bit more seriously. He's much more mature. There was a time last year when you thought, oh boy, this could go in one of 2 directions based on some of the things we'd heard, and it's gone in a positive direction. So love that. And Amir Hall, we've heard some comparisons to Josh Wallace. So I think you've got 2 good options there. So it was really the depth. And the one I didn't get to ask was about the interior depth, the depth on the interior line, guys, the defensive line, except for Rayshon Benny. And I thought that was a big news that he's going to be back. And Sherrone Moore said he thinks he will be good to go for fall camp. In the first couple of weeks, he should get right back into it. That's going to give them 3 guys on the interior that can be able to switch in and out of there that can absolutely dominate.
It's kind of weird DJ Waller hasn't been coming in for film anymore. So.
Well, he might be doing that at Kentucky and have fun there playing in front of those, 50,000 rabid basketball fans. That's what I would say, with all due respect. So.
As long as you say with all due respect.
With all due respect. I said with all due respect, AB. I said with all due respect.
That's right.
Doesn't mean you can say whatever the heck you want.
The heck it doesn't. It sure the heck does.
That's great. What were we talking about?
Right. We were talking about defensive takeaways and your question marks.
Yeah. Defensive. I really don't have any question marks about the defense. I mean, depth, maybe. Health maybe in certain spots, but it seems like these transfer safeties have integrated themselves really well. Heard a lot of good things about Jaden Mangum from Makari Page and some of the other people we talked to there. Wes Walker, I think, is going to be someone that's in the mix. So that, there were 4 safeties last year that played a similar amount of snaps. I actually think they might be set up to be pretty good, if not maybe a little bit better in some ways, which is weird to say when you don't have Rod Moore on the field. Which the other thing about that is that, so much talk has been about the leadership that Michigan loses by not having Rod Moore on the field, but he's still in the program. Like, he's going to be around. I bet you he's still voted a team captain. Like, he's still very much a guy that's a tone setter for them too. And, his role this year will be off the field. Unless he's able to I think probably somewhat miraculously come back in time for the season. I'm not banking on that. I know there's some breadcrumbs out there that, maybe he comes back. We'll see. I don't think, obviously, to me, the moves they made this offseason indicate that they are not expecting him back, but getting him back would be a massive bonus. The other takeaway is that Zeke Berry is kind of, if Fred Moore is the guy on the offensive side of the ball that we keep hearing good things about, you flip things over. Zeke Berry is a guy that I think, and we've talked about this before on here, how I think if he had stayed healthy in last year's fall camp, maybe he's in the mix for more playing time. Maybe he's what Keon Sapp became, right? So I think the fact that Makari Page compares him to Dax Hill, that's good news considering you're replacing Mike Sainristil, who replaced Dax Hill. So has a chance to be kind of like a situation where a guy just comes in and grabs the baton from two guys who did the pretty damn good job, and then Mikey Sainristil the best possible job someone could do in that role. I think there's an ease about that. And again, I know all the talk is about the leadership, but on the field, it feels like they're going to be fine there. And then Clayton's guy, Cole Sullivan, sounds like he's going to play a lot. Maybe in the contention for a spot on the 2 deep. There's a lot more guys at linebacker than maybe the public thinks, but get used to hearing that name because that's not the first time we've heard praise for him.
Mm-hmm. And we've seen it with our own eyes, right? In the spring game, some of the things he did. And Kirk Campbell was talking about having an eye on him, right? I think a Pennsylvania guy watching another Pennsylvania guy, he said after the spring game, he said he really caught his eye too.
Yeah, I mean, this is a pro Cole Sullivan podcast, so maybe we'll get him on or something like that. If he listens and he hears all the praise, I mean, why wouldn't he? But the only other things defensively, one, I like to hear the Josiah Stewart, Josh Uche comparison, and we've seen Josiah do that, but I think Sherrone wanted to highlight how strong he is, as well as being fast and kind of that smaller, quicker guy. And from what you hear from these players, though, Josiah Stewart, despite being a guy who's only been here a year, has taken a huge leadership role. I wouldn't be surprised if he's a captain this year as well for Michigan. Derek Moore is kind of different where, Sherrone said, hey, he doesn't say anything, but he's just so good every single play. And then and the third edge that Sherrone seems to continue to mention is TJ Guy. He had the quote in the spring, is anyone going to block TJ Guy today? He raves about him. I think the search for the fourth edge rusher is maybe ongoing. Cam Brandt in the mix and another guy in the mix, Dom Nichols, which leads us to the freshman. So I want to talk about those guys. Cole Sullivan, Sherrone said he's going to play this year, whether it's special teams or defense. He said he looks like a defensive end, which leads back to, again, my theory that they may just throw him out there. We'll see if they need some more guys on the edge. But Dom Nichols, who looked really good as well in the spring game. We talked about the Jordan Marshall, Blake Corum comparison. He mentioned both wide receivers, Amarion Stewart and Channing Goodwin as well. Both guys arrived this summer. But those are the freshmen that Sherrone Moore wanted to talk about. He said Dom Nichols is probably the guy he's, quote unquote, most excited about.
Yeah, and that was exciting to hear. So there's still a lot of talent, guys, on this team in the lower classes that guys are going to be emerging, and getting them some playing time this year is going to be big because we all know they're going to be losing a lot of talent again next year. Some of these guys are going to have to step up, but they are very talented, and these are guys that can play they can play anywhere. Let's be honest. So I liked it. He said the goofy personality of Dom Nichols. It sounds like he's got to rein him in a little bit at times, but at the same time, I think they said that he doesn't understand how good he can be. And I like that. And compared to a guy that, okay, I love the guys with confidence. Don't get me wrong, except for Curt Cignetti, who is a clown, the Indiana coach. And we'll talk. I want to close with that because Clay and I have differing opinions on that. But did you get that picture, AB, of Cignetti to?
I'll send it to Megan right now.
Send it to Megan because I want that up there. That just pretty much sums up who he is. But you know what? I like these guys with humility that they don't understand how good they can be, and it's up to the coaches to get it out of them. But I loved everything I heard from him talking about that freshman class. I think there are a number of guys that they see. Fred Moore was one of them last year that they think was underrated. And usually when they think that, and it wasn't just Jim Harbaugh, it was some of the other coaches on this staff, like a Campbell. Jay Harbaugh was really good at it. Sherrone Moore has been good at it. They identify talent, really guys that are, the 3-star talents that are really 5-star talents as well as anybody. Look at Mason Graham, for example, as well. So I'm confident that this group of freshmen is going to contribute mightily to Michigan's success in the future.
Michigan kind of underwhelmed when it came to recruiting rankings in the 2023 class and the 24 class, but they hit on a lot more of their targets higher up on the board in 24 than they did in 23. And Dom Nichols is probably one of those. Obviously, they had to grab 3-4 edge rushers in that class, and I think they like the guys they got. But Dom Nichols was one of the guys who was not ranked as high, but they liked, as you said, Chris. And that talk from Sherrone Moore of like, he doesn't know how good he is. It reminds me of Jim Harbaugh talking about Junior Colson, although, a few years ago, like, hey, the longer it takes for him to figure out how good he is, the better. And, Junior probably didn't really know how good he was for a while. And then he turns out to be, leaves after his junior year and becomes a Los Angeles Charger. And by the way, hope he recovers from a surgery he had recently here, as well as we'll be rooting for the Chargers. I was wearing my Chargers hat down in Indy, but
it was awesome. Love it.
So, but okay, let's end with that then, unless there's anything else you guys have. So I did want to, just bring up other Big Ten stuff we heard. Emeka Egbuka says, hey, it's going to be a hard game, even though they may not have the talent. It seemed like an innocent comment to me.
He said per se.
Yeah,
so
he
I'm
did say
pass, and
per se,
they might not have the same amount of talent and I think he was implying that Michigan lost a lot of talent. But I'll tell you this: there's still a lot of talent on that football team.
Well, that's kind of.
I'm sure some reporter said, "Oh, well, what does that game mean, given that Michigan lost all this talent?" We don't hear that part of it too.
We don't know the question. Yeah.
There are some prying questions at events like this, not from us, but from other people.
Of course not.
Yeah. Well, the fact that it was an innocent question, though, and he says, "Hey, they might not have the talent," kind of tells me that things might not have changed as much as they say in terms of how they view Michigan. And Ryan Day still saying, as you said, Chris, earlier in the show, we should have won that game. I mean, you turn the ball over. No coach wants to turn it over, but Ohio State played a hell of a game. I actually commended them on playing a great game. Like when people were like trying to kind of clown them after last year's game, it's like that was a hell of a football game that could have gone either way and looked like it was maybe going to go the other way once Ohio State tied the game up in the second half, but it didn't. So whatever, we'll see. It's probably lip service from Ohio State or whatever, and you don't really know one way or the other about how they've changed things. And hey, maybe they don't need to change things. Maybe they do have enough talent to just kind of roll out there and beat other teams on their schedule. But we'll see about that. We kind of mentioned Deshaun Foster bombing. That was another one of the things.
Oh.
I felt bad for him watching. Yeah, I mean, it was kind of one of those things where you want to look and you look away because you feel so bad for him. Curt Cignetti, we do have differing opinions on him. Here's my thing. There's the picture of him if you're watching.
Hey, I got a car for you here. It's the family truckster,
Here's the thing, though. He's not the car salesman to me. To me, the car salesmen are James Franklin and PJ Fleck. And I've come to like PJ Fleck. It's kind of entertaining at this point.
Yeah.
And James Franklin, he doesn't pertain to us this year anymore. So I kind of tuned him out because I knew whatever he was saying didn't matter anyway. But Curt Cignetti, the new Indiana coach, comes up there. And he's confident. He has won everywhere he's been at lower levels. He was just at James Madison, a school that just transitioned to the FBS and started to win in year one at their new level. But like these other guys come up in BS and don't say anything. The Indiana coach, regardless, is probably going to fail. But at least this guy's entertaining, willing to say something. It was kind of a stale Big Ten media days, but he made it a little more exciting. I find him entertaining. I think he's probably a good coach. So I got no problem with him.
It reminds me of somebody on board said it reminded him of Tim Brewster coming to Minnesota. I'm better than you. Google me. I win. Anthony put that quote out there. Google me. I win. I wish the people listening to this could see the picture that we have on our video podcast here.
They're going to have to come and subscribe.
Yeah, come and subscribe, guys, and look at because this is just a classic. This picture that Anthony Broome took sums up who I think this guy is. So he's got balls. I'll say that. The last 2 times that I was picked second to last in the conference, we played for a title. I'm not saying. I'm just saying. So you do that with Indiana, and I'll give you your props or give you your flowers, as Anthony Broome would say. But this picture right here sums it up. And I was going to say He makes James Franklin look like a new car salesman.
Okay.
Yeah.
I'm kind of in the middle on this one. Like, I don't dislike the guy. I think it's entertaining. I think Indiana probably needs a coach like that, as opposed to. I loved a quote from him I saw, and we're probably spending way too much time on him at this point. But
Okay.
there's a quote. I think it was in his scrum off to the side at the podium session where someone asked about his players being excited to play at UCLA, and he's like, "They're excited for all the wrong reasons. We're going to an old stadium to kick someone's ass." And I kind like, if you heard, let's just say you heard Jim Harbaugh or Sherrone Moore say that, you'd be like, hell yeah, that's awesome. So yeah, I mean, Godspeed to him. Indiana football is Indiana football. Yeah, that's the best way I could put it. So if they can find a way to power through and I don't know. In an 18-team Big Ten, do I think Curt Cignetti will spend any more time at Lucas Oil Stadium than his, the hour that he's at Big Ten media days? Probably not. But hey, he's entertaining, no doubt.
That's for sure.
Hey, when it's a tough game, I'm just kidding. I don't want that to happen, but who knows? They go to Indiana. Things have gotten weird there in the past with worse Indiana teams under Tom Allen, and Tom Allen had a little bit of success there. So we'll see. Jed Fish was back in the house, former Michigan assistant, now the Washington coach. Dan Lanning, very confident about his team, took a shot back at Kirby Smart, who said, hey, Oregon has unlimited NIL, as has been reported. And Dan Lanning said, hey, I didn't know Georgia was reeling in those number one classes without any NIL money. That's crazy. And he, of course, was at Georgia under Kirby Smart. But anything else, I guess, from any of the new members or anything we saw down there? It was weird to see the pictures of the Oregon Duck in the Midwest. They said they want to bring that to every game, but just a new feel.
Yeah, the big inflatable duck. I offered on the message board $100 to anybody who popped the thing. So I hope that doesn't get me in trouble for vandalism or something, but hell, I might do it myself. The last thing I want to finish with, I thought you guys did a hell of a job at the Champion Circle event. It was like a couple of pros out there interviewing the Michigan coaches and players. I was sorry I couldn't be there. I will be there next year, but man, that's great content. I hope people will go look at that. Especially, I thought the Kirk Campbell interview was very insightful. I thought in that, really, you guys made them comfortable enough that they gave some really great information. So very good work. Folks, come to our YouTube channel and watch that as well.
Appreciate it. AB, what do you got? Final words.
No, I'll just end on that note, basically. It was an honor to be there. I know there are outlets in our market that either weren't asked to be there or kind of thumbed their nose at it. We were honored to be there. I would love to do some more stuff like that. And yeah, it was a blast. It was just a good time. A lot of people asked how did you guys prepare for all that? It's like, they just kind of sat, we didn't know who we were getting and when. So we just kind of sat down and talked to them. There was a lot of fun. I hope it came through. It seemed like it came through. Yeah. And, a little inside baseball. Anytime you get through an event like that without any technical difficulties, we're on UM's public Wi-Fi there. I was great. So thank you guys for your support. Hopefully you not only watched it, if you haven't watched it yet, go check it out. If you haven't donated to Champion Circle yet, that was what, the genesis of the event was, drumming up some stuff for them. So check both of those things out.
Yeah, YouTube channel right now is filled with really good content. We got all those interviews from the golf outing. We got all of the interviews from Max Bredesen, Makari Page, Donovan Edwards, 2 different Sherrone Moore press conferences from Thursday in Indianapolis. So check that out. Subscribe to the channel, like this video and all of our videos. Take a couple minutes, but go in, hit the thumbs up button on every single video you see from the Wolverine. We appreciate that. Head to thewolverine.com. Use the promo code UM1 for 2 months of premium access for just $1. We got tons of stuff coming from Big Ten Media Day, but fall camp next week. We'll have a lot more coming then, and the season 36 days away, something like that. So we'll have a lot there, and you will be in for the beginning of Michigan season if you use that deal. And last time we will mention it here today, the 160-page Michigan Football Preview magazine is on sale at thewolverineondemand.com. Get your copy right now. Get ready for Michigan's season. We will see everybody next time.